Welcome to the Explainer. Usually we're taking a piece of text, breaking down the arguments, checking the data, the historical context, really digging into the literal words on the page. But today, we're going to take a radically different approach. We're doing a purely visual structural analysis of a document. Specifically, we're diving into 4 sequential pages from a file titled Mathematics 1720.pdf. And here's the catch. We aren't going to read a single word of the main body text today. Actually, based on our source material, we literally can't. Instead, we're going to treat the layout, the margins, the white space, and the text blocks as physical objects in space. Because, believe it or not, the way information is visually structured on a page tells a profound story before your brain even begins to process the language.
So think about it. What can a document's layout actually tell us before we read a single word? When you open up a book, or maybe a dense legal contract, or an academic paper, you have this immediate gut-level psychological reaction. Right? You instantly gauge how difficult the reading's going to be, how formal the context is, and exactly what kind of cognitive load is about to be demanded of you. It's like a giant puzzle. The physical layout of a document is a compelling mystery all on its own. It's this unspoken, nonverbal language that authors and publishers use to implicitly prime us. So today, we're going to decode that nonverbal language using these 4 specific pages as our ultimate case study.
Okay, let's dive into this. The very first page. What immediately jumps out? It's the sheer, vast amount of white space. It is almost entirely blank. Sure, there are some incredibly faint, ghostly traces of formatting marks, maybe a page number or a tiny little header, but the dominant feature here is just nothingness. But in document design, white space is never truly empty, right? It's an active element. This vast sparseness acts as a visual palate cleanser. It's a breath before you take the plunge. When a document begins with this much empty space, it's visually whispering to the reader. It creates this sense of hesitation, or maybe a formal pause, completely isolating whatever tiny piece of information might be resting there from the rest of the world.
And this brilliantly illustrates the shift. When you contrast that first page with the second, the difference is absolutely jarring. We go straight from the blank, ethereal mystery of the opening page directly into a sudden, heavily dense wall of text. It's a masterful, if maybe a little intimidating, use of visual weight. It's the architectural equivalent of walking out of an empty, echoing hallway straight into a densely packed, bustling auditorium. The layout is actively manipulating our sense of pacing here. That sudden drop into heavy text density tells us, without a doubt, that the introduction is over, the pleasantries are totally concluded, and the intense, demanding work of the document has abruptly begun.
Up at the top right of that second page, there's a specific structural element acting as a visual anchor. A formal header that reads, Introduction. A header like this, sitting all by itself, isolated above a massive block of dense text, tells the eye exactly where to start. But more importantly, it visually prepares the reader for a huge influx of information. The capitalization and the isolated placement of that single word establish absolute authority. It confirms our suspicion from earlier. That blank opening page, that was just the waiting room. This header is the door swinging wide open into the main event. Stepping back to systematically evaluate what we're actually looking at, we can confidently pinpoint 4 distinct physical layout elements, keeping totally neutral about the illegible content itself. First, we've got that extreme white space acting as a pause. Second, the formal right-aligned headers, serving as navigational beacons. Third, those imposing, unbroken paragraph blocks. Seriously, notice the complete lack of visual breaks or subheadings in the text mass itself. It's just a wall. And fourth, those consistent, justified margin widths. The text forms a perfectly straight line down both the left and right sides. And that isn't an accident. Justified text is a deliberate layout choice designed to maximize the ink on the page and project a strong sense of rigid, unyielding academic formality. If we zoom out a bit to consider the structural rhythm of these pages as they might actually appear in a physical bound document, we uncover something pretty fascinating. In publishing design, you always have to consider the left-facing page versus the right-facing page, the verso and the recto. The positioning of the text blocks and the spaces left in the margins create a very distinct visual symmetry. The margins aren't just empty space, they're literal frames holding these dense data blocks in place. If you look closely at the alignment across the spread, you can almost feel the physical gutter of the book right down the middle. The structural rhythm here is highly traditional, wide margins to hold the page and heavily justified text to signal serious intent. Let's move to the next part and see how this builds. We hit the third page, and what do we find? A relentless, solid block of text offering absolutely zero mercy to the reader's eye. The formatting here is continuous and unbroken. The dense block of justified text completely fills the central frame of the page. There are no visual resting places. Nothing.
In document design, when you present a reader with a layout like this, you are demanding sustained concentration. You're visually communicating that this information cannot be skimmed, it has to be waded through. The layout itself is literally a test of endurance.
Now, what's really interesting about this progression is that seeing the final 2 pages together cements the document's true character. The uniformity is absolute. By this point, the layout has firmly established the rules of engagement. This is serious, demanding material that requires total, uninterrupted focus. The persistent structure creates a visual rhythm that completely conditions the reader to expect a constant, unbroken flow of complex data right through to the very end of the text.
So we've essentially just read a story without reading a single word. The document began with a hesitant whisper, that vastly sparse opening page, but immediately shifted into an overwhelming wall of data. Now you might be wondering, why does paying attention to these structural cues actually matter? Well, because as focused learners, we need to understand how formatting primes our brains. Before you even attempt to comprehend a complex thesis statement, the physical layout of the page has already set your psychological expectations. It's already determined the cognitive load you feel you're about to take on.
Think about the visual intimidation of those unbroken, dense blocks of formatting. Does that visual weight fundamentally change how we absorb the information within? If this exact same text were broken up with snappy bullet points and generous line spacing, would we approach it with a completely different mindset? Absolutely. Formatting isn't just decoration. It is the lens through which we encounter knowledge. Think about how the visual structure of the things you read every single day is subtly guiding your attention and shaping your understanding. Keep that in mind the next time you open any document. Thanks for exploring this visual landscape with me today.